For anybody who hasn't watched The Queen's Gambit, potential spoilers ahead. All right, I'm going to do the intro again. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of The Hills Have Voices. I'm right here with Kim Sargent, and I'll let her do a little introduction about herself before I introduce myself.
Kim Sargent. I work here at Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative. I am the Social Studies Instructional Specialist. But most importantly, I'm a big fan of science fiction, fantasy, a media consumer, a heavy media consumer, maybe.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm just about as consumer as they get. Thank you, Kim, for that introduction. My name's Alex Smith. I actually just waved backwards. I'm one of the hauler engineers here at the Kentucky Valley Educational Co-op, and I'm a content creator as well as a content consumer. I'm kind of the VR lead and workshop lead, kind of just handle everything, kind of jack of all trades. So,
and master of none, as they say. Jack of all trades, master of none.
That's it. That's what we all are, honestly. With the introduction out of the way, let's move on to what we're here to talk about.
Awesome.
So Netflix released a miniseries, and it's called The Queen's Gambit. And it doesn't make it clear in the get-go, but as the story lets on, it lets you know that it takes place in Kentucky. And the girl, born and raised in Kentucky. It looks like she was even from a trailer, which I thought was pretty cool. So The Queen's Gambit. It's a Netflix miniseries. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. Go and watch it right now. It's one of the most inspiring miniseries I've ever seen. And within 4 weeks of it being on Netflix, it was the number one. It was Netflix's number one miniseries they've ever premiered to date. And I'm glad they used the word miniseries and not TV series, because it means it's over. They're not gonna try and make a sequel. Pretty sure that means it's over and done, which is something TV struggles with today.
Yes, because I think that sometimes when you do the TV series, you're like, well, I can catch up. It'll be there and I can go, binge and watch more of it and then let it sit there a while and then go back and binge. But what I love about the concept of the miniseries, for one thing, I'm definitely a child of the 80s when the miniseries was really born and put out there for all of us to consume. Although I have to say the 70s, probably Alex Haley's Roots was really the first one that I was aware of. But anyway, the idea of the miniseries says, you've just got a limited time to enjoy this. And I think we need to have more series that do that, because this whole idea that you can just veg out and just binge and watch this whole TV series, but the miniseries, I think you have to really invest early and deeply. And then once you do that, I think you have a different connection to the characters. So I do love a good miniseries.
Yeah, it caught me by storm. The Queen's Gambit, before I finished it, I was not aware it was a book. I was not aware it was anything to the fact. I just thought it was a random Netflix show and started watching it. And I couldn't put it down. If it was a book, I couldn't put it down. My next goal is to read the book.
Yeah, from what I understand, you really need to. My husband has read some of his stuff, and I think Tevis himself, Walter Tevis, is a really interesting person himself. But I think that you see that in a lot of his works. And what I love about him is that he writes what he knows about. And I think that my husband has taken several writing courses and has even written and published a book. But was really interesting in one of the courses is that his mentor said, write what you know. And I think that is the smartest thing an author can do, because sometimes you have some of these folks who get out there and they want to write about what they love, which may be like science fiction or fantasy or whatever, but sometimes that storyline can get thin if they don't know enough about it. But if you're writing about a place that you live in, and you're looking at every tree, you drive by every driveway, who lives in what house, there's such a robust nature, such a richness to that the story itself, becomes more fully developed. And I think that's one thing about Tevis, because he does that. A lot of people, like you talked about when you said that you were watching it, the minute I watched it, but this is only because I am old. Can we get that established? But the minute it opens up, and I think it says Mount Sterling, and my husband and I and I looked at him, I went, oh my God, is this Mount Sterling, Kentucky? And he said, I think so. And then when they kept talking about Lexington, I went, and for us, being from Kentucky and seeing a movie that has us in it, or at least our place, because, for those of us in Eastern Kentucky, you don't have to have our accent in there. You don't have to have people that dress like us, look like us, or whatever it may be, even though we dress and look like everybody else. It's not that. But what we love, we are so attached to place that when you just identify place, I think that's one thing that the TV series Justified did, is that, for those of us, for me, because it's based in Harlan County, ideally, that when people would connect with that, just because you're mentioning those places, I think we automatically connected. But I thought but yeah, for me, I think that Tevis, where he writes about Kentucky, what a lot of people that, while he was not born here, and boy, howdy, I just took off on this. So sorry about that.
Go for it. Hey, I'm listening to every word. I did see where Tevis was actually born in California, and I thought I was like, and he's writing about Kentucky. So I'm like, maybe that says to the fact that, Kentucky is a special place that even if you're not born here, it can still feel like home.
Oh, yeah. Well, his family, and I think that's it. And of course, I'm going to attach to that. His family was actually very much a Kentucky family, I think, in many respects, because his family, and I'm not sure the year, so I'm not going to say that one out loud, but his family received an early land grant around Madison County. So that would be Richmond. So his family was already connected here physically. But I thought was really interesting, some of the stuff that you looked at, did you see anything about his early childhood?
Because he struggled with heart issues.
Yes, he contracted rheumatoid. I don't know if he was the rheumatoid fever, but he ended up developing heart complications because of that. So when he lives in the convalescence home, and then here's the other part I thought was interesting. He was on phenobarbital for like a year, which is a downer. It's a barbiturate. And, interestingly enough, you have your main character in the Queen's Gambit that becomes addicted to those. Maybe that's discussion for a little bit later in this, but anyway, and then finally he joins his family like a year later here in Kentucky, but he becomes very attached, to the people and to his community. 3 or 4 of his books have been turned into movies. Like you've got The Color of Money, it's all about pool. And, he grew up with some, I can't remember his first name, but the kid's last name was Kavanaugh. And that was his best friend there, in central Kentucky. So, and he runs a pool hall. So he's going to write about a pool hall. Again, writing about what you know. And then he's got The Hustle. And then where I first ever learned about Walter Tevis was many, many moons ago. And again, this is going to show my age. Back in the 80s, David Bowie was in a movie, and it was called The Man That Fell to Earth. And oh my gosh, phenomenal. I mean, David Bowie is brilliant in this, but I think one reason why he's brilliant in it is because the writing is so good. The story itself is so good. So if you have not seen that, highly recommend. That's another one to go back and pull in on that. But anyway, I'm going to hush because I could talk about. But the thing I didn't mention a second ago. Okay, I said okay, I'm going to hush, and then I said wait, one more thing.
Go for it.
And that is that Tevis actually wrote for the Kentucky Highway Department. So, I don't know if it was like these manuals they had to develop or if it was parts of map legends or whatever it may be, but he actually wrote. So he knows the highways of Kentucky and he knows what those rural and urban areas look like. So he has a distinct advantage. And I think that if you're going to bring people in on a character, just like I said earlier, really give them a sense of place of the character, because there's going to be aspects of that character's life that you're going to want to attach to. And I think that's going to be so incredibly important. But go ahead, just talk about. So, why did you like? I've got to know. Why did you like Queen's Gambit so much? What did you attach to in all of this?
There was a scene, I think, in like the 3rd episode, which I was already hooked. I don't know. There's something about the way it's filmed. Yeah. There's something about the fact that it's in Kentucky, because you can give me any show that's in Kentucky, and I'm going to watch it because immediately, they could, like you said, they could just say the name. And I'm in it. You're like there. Justified, just like Justified. I was like, you said Harlan County?
Yeah.
I'm in it. Yeah. So that fact was great. But then just like the Holler, we're big film buffs and everything. It is just filmed in this like incredible way. And there's one shot in season 3. It's they got the cowboy character. I don't know what his name is. He's played by an actor who's in like The Maze Runner, and he's also in Love Actually when he was a lot younger.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I can't think of his name at the moment, but in my video, pull up a picture of him. And but he's in it, and they're doing they're going to face head to head, and it's when she faces him. I can't remember if she loses or wins, but there's a sequence there where they keeps just like doing all these separate shots, like 6 shots on the screen at a time. And it's got them two, like she's on one side, he's on the other. And it's like they're staring each other down. And it's just like something like, it was such a fun way of filmmaking. You could tell when they created this, they had a lot of fun. And another thing they do in the Queen's Gambit is a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows have big cuts, like just cut, they cut every 5 minutes, it creates a tension. But what's more interesting than a long cut from a bunch of cuts is just one long sequence. And that's where the Queen's Gambit has a bunch of those where you kind of just see where she's at. So there's one, and this was my favorite shot of the entire show. When she first goes in that Kentucky chess room when she's in that tournament.
Oh, in the high school, in the gym. Yes,
yeah, and it zooms out, and as it zooms out, you see the banners that say Kentucky State Championship, and you just see a room full of men. That's all you see. You see this one woman who's coming in, and you just see this room full of men. And I don't know, to that's empowering because you know, I mean, at that point in the show, she's going to go in there and she's going to destroy every one of her opponents. And
let me give you a different perspective on that one too. As a woman, you know that when she walked in that room, that was the first thing that she saw. We always talk about that glass ceiling, especially when it comes to women's advancement in politics or the workplace or whatever it may be. But as a woman, and especially at that time, I want to say, was it the late 60s, early 70s, whatever, that's represented in that time period. So now we're talking about the full setting. Mm-hmm. So you realize when she walks in there to do that, I love how the twins that are registering people are just dismissing her, for one thing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, but you've never played in a tournament. She goes, yeah, but I'm going to play in this one. And, and she was just automatically, like I said, dismissed. And she gets in there and proves herself. And the more she does that, the more they're like, wait a minute. And you can tell that they're having a hard time understanding that this is a woman that's doing that. But I can tell you right now, when she walks in that room, she is looking at not only a figurative ceiling, but a physical ceiling, mm-hmm. because she knows, this is the blocks, and I love it that she gets that look on her face because she sees every person in this room just like another brick in the wall, and she's going to knock them out until she makes that big hole and she just pushes right on through. Mm-hmm. So as a woman, when you're watching that, instantaneously I connected. I was like, you go right now, So, and I think that's something to think about too. I think that Tevis really, speaks to something here. I think this is another reason why so many, because I've seen a lot of women talk about this on Facebook and Twitter and things like that. People are connecting with it. Women are as a character because it's kind of like she almost becomes every woman. Mm-hmm. In that moment, because, and there's numerous moments that she does that. And it's like, she's just this singular creature going through the world, removing her enemies one by one. And she's conquering the whole, and at the end, she does conquer. Oh dear. I just gave a spoiler.
I think that's fine. Let me go and record that. For anybody who hasn't watched the Queen's Gambit, potential spoilers ahead.
Great. Yeah.
Because
she conquers the whole world at the end.
She does. Yeah. She gets Borgov.
Yeah.
and at the same time, she gets to play chess with one of the guys who wrote one of the books she read growing up. And I was like, that. Yeah. The world building in this story and in the miniseries is fun. And you feel like you're there, and that's what I love. Nothing in the miniseries is wasted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I can't say enough about Tevis. He's great at that. I think if you have a really good, solid author, world building is what they do, because you have to do that, because you have to transport. If you want that person to come into your world, to live there for a while, to stay with you, to get to know the characters, and to, and again, to read your work, you've got to develop that really rich, robust world. And he does that. But what I love about, just like you said, you go in there, it's like every person is real. Every place they go is a real place, even though we know that in terms of, like I said a minute ago, now I want to research Fayette County High School. I want to know the high schools that have existed in Fayette County, because mm-hmm. I have to know, was Tevis there? And another thing people don't realize too, and this is something I thought was brilliant when I finished watching this, was that Tevis was also a high school teacher. People don't realize that. He taught high school and he taught university, but you can tell, because he knew those young kids well. He knew how, each of them, like when you think of the great chess champion that she faces off with, she works really hard all day long to get to him, and then she gets to him and she annihilates him. That guy, that character was fully developed. You knew him. You knew that kid, because he's the kid that comes into class. He's the kid that doesn't really talk to anybody. He's the kid that looks down at his book all the time, yada, that whole kind of thing. And then you had, the twins that were registering. Well, they're a little bit more social, because they hang out and talk to each other all day long. So they want to talk to, you knew these kids. As a high school teacher, there were so many people in this movie I recognized immediately, just changed their names, and it's somebody I know.
he knew it all, and I had no idea he was a high school teacher. Just being a teacher and then able to like still write these stories, and that is fascinating. And hopefully for anybody who's watching, hopefully that just inspires you. You know, I know teaching, you know, back then is different than teaching now, but I mean, there's always time to create a novel. So, hey, anybody out there want to make the new novel, go for it.
And I think it's interesting too. Like, he went to the University of Kentucky. He studied there. Before that, he graduated from Model Lab in Richmond. So, you know, I mean, when you're in Kentucky and you say Model Lab, you're like, oh, I know that school. That's a great school. And so, you know, you're familiar with that right off the bat. But, you know, he goes to UK and he is deeply attached to the word, and he wants to, you know, not only to be a writer, but to really, I love how you said that earlier, and I'm probably going to say it 3 more times before this podcast is over. You know, he wants to build worlds so people can visit. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. I
don't know what attached me to the miniseries, but once I got started on it, I mean, we took 2 days, and I'm not one to binge a TV show. So to sit through it for 2 days, I was hooked. Absolutely. Like every time anything would happen, I look over at my wife. I'm like, did you see that? Look how awesome she is. Look at her go. Yeah. I was like, she's going to kick his butt.
I think one thing that, just as I graduated from high school and went to college, was about the time that Tevis passed away, you know, and I could only imagine what more he could have written. But I saw 2 of his works brought to the screen, you know, by the time he had passed. So, I mean, he had already, I think, really established to a large degree his legacy. I mean, people were going to definitely know his name, but I think that what was really interesting is that he did such a remarkable job of kind of representing the times pretty accurately. Like, for instance, because now you become sensitive to that. And I started looking around at these places, like, again, as I spoke earlier, you know, being a woman, and when she walked into that room full of men, like, I don't think that I would have had the guts to do what she did that day. I know I wouldn't have, you know, but she did. But then you also realize too, like, I started looking around and I started looking, well, are there other groups, you know, who else is not here? You know, you didn't see African Americans unless it was on the national scene, like a little bit later and that kind of thing. Like, in order for the movie to start really showing a wider array of characters, but most importantly, to start showing more, you know, equity and representation, they had to move out, you know, of the States practically. They had to go international to show that there are lots of people that engage in this. But I wanted to know more about them because, you know, playing chess is, you know, if you've got time to play chess and really devote a lot of time to it, then there's maybe not other things that you're not working, you know, 40 and 60 hour weeks and stuff like that. Or maybe you are, but you're just taking that extra time to really engage in chess. But I did find myself looking for more faces, you know, and that kind of thing, to see if they were there. But just the fact that it was so heavily male dominated for me, I think spoke volumes about the time period. And for those people now who, you know, are our chess champions and that kind of thing, you know, the great strides that they're making to be there.
That's the thing about the show too. It made chess interesting, and it made it seem like a sport too. Because if anyone would have told me chess was as intricate or had as many moves, or you could do half the stuff this TV show said you could do, I wouldn't have believed it. The Queen's Gambit is actually an opening in chess. Now, don't ask me what that means, but it is a move in chess that chess players use.
Yeah, and I think one thing to think, and I think that it's interesting too that they used Queen. Mm-hmm. But I think what I want to ask you, so forgive me if I flip the table here. What did you think of the use of the custodian as the main character, as the one who is the most intellectually gifted in the facility, the one that could actually guide her and take her through the game? Because he's pretty amazing, I think, as a person. Mm-hmm. And I love it that he is so layered. But I'm just curious, what did you think about that he ends up being the guide into the new world for her?
I love throughout the whole show, she tries to give him recognition too, but no one would write about it until the Lexington Herald. I mean, until one of the reporters in Russia. But to use the janitor, I mean, because, you know, normally you see a janitor and they're invisible. Yeah. You see a janitor, you're like, just your average Joe.
And that's not right either. Yeah.
I mean, no, it's definitely not the right standpoint to take on anybody either, because we're all equals and we're all equally smart. I mean, I could be a cashier at our local grocery store, but it doesn't mean I'm not smart.
That's
It just,
exactly right.
I just like doing it. Maybe, you know, times are tough.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, the pandemic has taught us is times get tough. I mean, just, we're not all on everyone's equal, but we're not always on the same playing field on like our advantages in life.
Yeah.
So to let the janitor be the one that like shows her this new world, and to show her that chess is this intellectual sport, and that it can be fun, it can be learned and mastered, or champion, even I think it's grand champion. There's a word that maybe it's mastered.
I think she becomes a grandmaster at the very end, and again, I hate doing these spoilers, but I've got to tell you, the scene where she finds, and I think it's interesting too that she finds him. It has almost an Alice in Wonderland quality when she goes down those steps and she finds him. So you already feel, you know, there's a little nod here, you know, to Alice in Wonderland when she goes down there and she meets him, and then he's, you know, and she's like, "What are you doing?" You know, and I think that from that moment on, she's never the same as a character. She becomes so consumed with chess. But I got to tell you, you know, I've got a couple of relatives that have played nationally in different chess tournaments and things like that. And listen, that is, just like you said, that is a full-on intellectual sport. And you know, and the time, and most importantly, the dedication that it takes to really to go through those ranks and to compete, but most importantly, to gain those titles at each level, or to get that ranking, that tournament ranking. That's one thing, because it would have no longer been a mini series if they had really shown you what it takes to do that. But I think Tevis does a tremendous job in showing you, or at least hinting at, the levels that she has to go through to be able to achieve that. And that's, you know, and that's just like I talked about earlier, like you could really tell that he knew those kids between the ages of 15 and 20, like he really knew how to, but I thought he also did a phenomenal job, speaking of which, as well. And I think that the people who wrote the screenplay from the book, most importantly, I think we have to give them a tremendous amount of acknowledgement as well, is that they do a really good job of really showing that without almost insulting our intelligence, you know, saying, okay, this is what happened here, and here's all the stuff that happened around that. They hint at each of those levels, but they give you just enough knowledge that you're going to figure out, wow, you know, what she's accomplishing here is pretty phenomenal. And what these other people are accomplishing is really phenomenal.
Yeah, because for an outsider looking in on chess, it's gonna appear pretty boring. I mean, they took a sport where you have 64 squares and you just move about 12 figures a piece, or there's a number there. I'm sorry, chess players, but
I've got to count that.
And you just move those, and they made it so interesting. They made it so intriguing. I want to learn chess. If I finish the show and I want to buy a chessboard. If you didn't know, apparently sales of chessboards are up on the US Goliath Games, which is a website. Yes. They're up 1,000% right now. I mean, the sales are crazy.
Yeah. I can tell you a funny story about this one. I've actually tried to learn chess a couple of times. I think I could do better now. I think my attention span is just a smidge better. But in the college, rather, this one friend of mine was going to teach me how to do it, and you know, and he's brilliant. So he was, and I have to, in full disclosure, I won my first game against him, and I beat him fair and square. But here's the kicker: I can't tell you how I did it. I was just grabbing pieces because I thought, oh my God, how long is this going to take? Because I had the attention span of a gnat. So I'm sitting, I'm thinking, boy, I've really got to go. Some of my friends are getting together and I really want to get there. And, you know, and so we're at this gathering for this one club that had been there. So they had brought chess boards for everybody to play and that kind of stuff. But anyway, and so he said, I want to teach you how to play this. You're going to learn. So he's taking me through all that, and he tells me how each of them moves. So I just keep moving. And he looked down and he went, oh my God, you have me in checkmate. And I went, no, I don't really see. And he went, no, really. There's nowhere I could move. How did you do that? And I went, I'm a fast learner. Reality? No.
No clue what you did.
No clue what I did. So yeah, you know, I don't recommend that. Who knows? Maybe I even did the Queen's Gambit move. No, I didn't. But anyway.
You never know.
No,
I
I
don't know what it
couldn't.
looks like. You could show me a chess move and say that's the Queen's Gambit,
That's
and I would
yeah.
believe you. I tried to watch a video before this, but you just can't. That's the wrong way to start learning
Yeah.
chess. Is just to pick
Yeah.
an opening move and say yes.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, that I could not come in with that knowledge because chess apparently
No.
takes a bit more time to learn.
Yes. A
It's
lot
not
more time.
checkers.
No, and I'm not even good at checkers. So that tells you right there the extent to my talent and knowledge.
You give you 64 squares and you're gonna start struggling, huh?
Oh yeah, immediately. Like within about 6 squares, I'm struggling.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. So that's really sad. Really sad.
It's not. We all have what we're good at. They take those barbiturates, those pills.
Mm-hmm.
The adoption center gives those, and in the beginning, it led me to believe those were what gave her kind of her abilities in chess, and maybe in a way they might have. I'll have to read the book, maybe even watch the miniseries again. But until she finally quits it because of that one guy's help, she gets better. Like she's able to like kind of guess what her opponent's going to do and does all that. And at the main end, she even dumps it. So I feel like that was the miniseries saying she never goes back. That's her kicking her addiction.
And I think that's one thing. I think especially looking at the world we live in now, that addiction is very commonplace. So I think that there is a component to this that, but I think another thing too, people may or may not know about Tevis is that he did struggle with alcohol. He finally kicks the habit, but I can't remember how many years before he passed away that he did. I don't think it was very long before. I know that his first marriage ended in divorce. He had 2 children, but his first marriage ends in divorce, and his second wife actually, of course, outlives him. And I'm not really sure of the circumstances around his rehabilitation and his sobriety and how that plays into a second marriage, but. I think the fact that he's actually writing about addiction, and also I think it's very interesting, again, that he brings in the whole barbiturate thing. It's almost like you feel like, again, this is an Alice in Wonderland quality, the whole idea of, drink this one to be big, drink this one to be small, drink me, that whole kind of thing in Alice. And I think for, initially, for her when she, starts getting these, and then, and I think it's also interesting as well, by the way, that I love it when she's in the children's home. It's an African American female that takes her under her wing, and you very quickly learn that this person really is going to be somebody that's going to be very important in her life, because more than once she steps in to give her knowledge that she would not have otherwise, or offers protection, in many respects. And I love that. I love that character. But when you think about how Tevis really kind of deals with, like you said, with this aspect of addiction, I think that tells you right there that he's got some inside knowledge with that. And I think
you said right what you know.
Yeah. And I think that when you think about how she does kick that habit, and she, and it's almost like the ruby red slippers. I mean, how many times can I allude to other things? But, when you think of the Wizard of Oz, at the end, she says, you've had the power all along. You've always had the ruby red slippers. Just click them together 3 times and you can go home. For her, and I always forget the main character's name.
Beth Harmon.
Thank you. How can I forget that? I think because I got so attached to the character, I'm like, her name's not even important. She's like part of the family. But anyway, when at the end, when, like you said, when Beth dumps all of that and she looks up and she can see the pieces, then she realizes that the power has been in her all along. And I think that's why that last game is so powerful.
We'll go ahead and start wrapping this up. Any final say-sos on the Queen Gambit? Any final words that you'd like our viewers to know?
I just think that I want to look and say, welcome to Kentucky, and while it doesn't tell the whole story of Kentucky, I think what I love about it is it tells a story of just regular everyday Kentucky. I think that, it opens up, very much in Eastern Kentucky. I think that there is a component to this. And I've talked to a couple of people who are not from here from originally that have watched it, and they're like, is that, and I'm like, it's rural Kentucky. I think that to get over this whole idea that you've got Eastern Kentucky and then you have Kentucky. No. And that's why I love Tevis, is because you have rural Kentucky, which is what we are. And then you have urban Kentucky. And I love how he really goes in between those worlds. And then eventually they just kind of meld. I think that, so I would invite people, even though that becomes, Kentucky itself becomes less of a character the longer it goes on, but I love it. It all goes, like she never, and I think this is so true, I think she never forgets her roots. And that is the thing about her as a character that I love. Just like you said, she goes back to the janitor. She says, please acknowledge him. He's the one that made all of this happen. It is a guy from the Herald Leader, which again, I was just got so excited the first time he said, he said his name, and he said from the Herald Leader. And I went, oh my gosh, I read that every day of my life for the first, 30 years of my life. I love it. So, I want to just say to people, welcome to Kentucky, watch this, consume it, know that who she is so much of who we are all across the state. But no, I think it's just a great movie. And and I want to say girl power, because she consumes the world and it's awesome.
She does. And I mean, everything in her wake, it just, she,
good and bad, by the way, good and bad.
Yeah, good and bad. But she busts through that ceiling, that glass ceiling. She shatters it. She does. And her watching her journey from just a little girl who knows about chess and is a nobody to grand champion, beats Russia. I mean, it's a journey. Literally. Sorry for the spoilers.
But I think that's, and final note on that, I think that is something else too that I think Tevis did a good job with, and that is, he shows the people in her wake, but I think because she not only breaks a glass ceiling, she breaks a lot of hearts all along the way, because her heart is broken. She's not whole, and it's like chess fills in those blanks for her. It becomes that thing where she can find her importance, she can find her ability, she can find her talent, and those are all things that even if you don't, if you come into the world with a deficit, and you have to find that thing that fills you in a positive way. And I don't think she ever stops really doing that. And I think that's the beauty of the end when she's walking through that, here goes another spoiler, when she's walking through that sea of elderly men that sit outside and play chess in sub-zero weather in Russia, apparently. But anyway, she's walking through them and they stop because she is who they admire. And she sits down to play with this one man. And it's kind of like she says, this is my world and I love it. And I have found me in this world. So I think that's something else that I really love about the movie.
No, I agree. And that is so fun. I never even thought about the sub-zero temperatures in Moscow or Russia and those elderly men playing, because that is kind of hilarious. That's the best thing about television and miniseries. You get to suspend your disbelief or suspend your belief system. Everything that's not fun about the world and everything else. Yeah. All of a sudden is fun. The sub-zero temperatures, you can sit out in that in a movie. That's fun.
Yeah. It's going to be my last suggestion as we wind up. What we have to do next is we need to read the book and then come back and compare the book to the movie.
I agree. I just got a Kindle for Christmas, so I'm more than ready to download that.
I think I'm on my third Kindle.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had to get the little paperwhite so I could read it in bed, and I had an old Kindle, but it didn't have a backlight, so trying to read it was.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Well, I just got to tell you, thank you for including me in this. I'm thrilled, to be your first guest in this inaugural thing, to kind of try this thing out. It will be so interesting when you get to episode 56, and then you look back at episode 1 and you were like, "What was I thinking?
What was I doing? Why did I ever do this?"
There.
I am so busy now.
I'm kidding, but no, thank you so much, Alex. I loved this movie, and I'm like you. Now I'm going to read the book, and maybe we can get our own chess club going, man.
Let's learn some chess, and I'm going to be foreverly grateful that you blessed us with your presence in the first episode of The Hills Have Voices. I'm excited to get this podcast going. I've wanted to do a podcast for so long, and I wanted you to be my first guest, and I finally found something that, it hit home and it felt right and it's fresh and it's new. So
awesome.
Thank you so much, Kim, for this.
Thank you.
And,
thank you.
For anybody listening, that's it for today's episode. And me and Kim, we may be hollering at you later once we read the book.
Absolutely.
We'll see you.
Take care, Alex. Thank you.
See you, Kim. Thank you.
Bye-bye.